Counter-narrative news, bringing you daily news today on Monday, the 3rd of April 2023. Going to Palestine, an interesting survey conducted by the Palestinian Research for Policy and survey research group showing percentages of Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza of 58% support a return to armed confrontations and resistance and intifada against the white colonial settler state of Israel. And that's 58% people who would admit that they're supporting an armed struggle for self-determination. So you can probably guess that there's probably more than just 58%. In the same survey, more than 70% of West Bank occupied Palestinians said they supported the resistance attack in the village of Hawara that left 2 settlers dead, while 2/3 of those surveyed in occupied West Bank supported the formation of the new armed groups that are not controlled and don't take orders, actually in some kind of level of tension and confrontation with the Palestinian Authority, which often conducts security operations against them. These groups are mostly comprised of young Palestinian men in things like the Jenin Battalion or the Lion's Den, just organised, localised groups of resistance fighters of young people. Support for these new independent groups is seen as an outgrowth of the Palestinian public's growing mistrust of the Palestinian Authority and reflects the hopelessness about the prospect of a political solution to this long-standing problem now of colonialism in Palestine. Public support for the armed resistance is further confirmed by overwhelming opposition to the Palestinian Authority's collaboration with the occupying authority. A large majority of those surveyed, somewhere around 70%, think that Israeli countermeasures, which are meant to punish those who conduct resistance attacks, and they collectively punish their families, such as house demolitions and expulsions, etc. All those surveyed, more than 70%, said this is only going to increase the intensity of resistance attacks. So this is what we can see now is a new generation of young people, which has happened every generation in Palestine since the occupation in 1967, or going back to the start of the colonial project proper with the formation of the state, occupying state in 1948. Of course, preceding that, the British state facilitated the initial colonial settlement project from around the turn of the last century, 19th and 20th century. So interesting survey there, which we may do further discussions and explorations around. Going over to some really positive news, it's the 10-year anniversary of one of the most important grassroots movements in the country of Britain, which is the Housing Action Southwark and Lambeth, based in the southern London boroughs of Southwark and Lambeth. It's a really beautiful campaign, actually, directly assisting the housing problems around repairs, delayed repairs, overcrowded housing, emergency housing, around housing oppression by the council and landlords, or putting people in housing not fit for human beings in terms of supported housing. You can see the pictures reflecting really the grassroots communities. You can see particularly the racialized communities of the Latin American working class diaspora, their children and their families. Just a beautiful sight in what is really a growing, very dark political moment of history that we're living through. And speaking of which, going over to Home Secretary of the far-right Tory regime here, Suella Braverman, coming up with this classic far-right trope against black and brown men in particular. It's gone on for centuries, around trying to essentialize the organised sexual abuse of women and girls as Pakistani men. It's just a far-right ridiculous thing that's even been debunked from the Home Office's own report in 2020 that says you cannot actually finger point disproportionately to Pakistani men being involved in this. And in the way that this is promoted in an anti-Muslim way in general by the far right, particularly Tommy Robinson, Stephen Yaxley Lennon, in trying to put an equal sign between this racist depiction of Pakistani men in grooming gangs and an equal sign with Islam. It's just all ridiculous. Of course, all of this is to cover up a whole bunch of things. First of all, really that the state's own implication in the what's now known openly by the government's own appointed report by Louise Casey, showing that the police force are institutionally misogynistic racist and homophobic, that it's actually the systemic failures of an oppressive police force and oppressive authorities on a local and national level that through this enacting and practicing a classist, racist, misogynistic attitude towards communities is what directly leads to these things. And also the bigger issue of the way in which the NHS and the BBC, British governments and other institutions of the state all collaborated to deliver over 50 years of high-level sexual abuse of mainly girls by Jimmy Savile as well. Now, Keir Starmer, the leader of the Labour Party, has chimed in as well, never to miss an opportunity to try and get that racist vote. Keir Starmer also commenting on how he prosecuted quote-unquote Pakistani men when he was Director of Public Prosecutions, but also he sent a lot of working class people to jail for just quote-unquote stealing bottles of water and nappies, etc. Just a real toxic situation, but also this is all indicative of how everything has shifted so far to the right, and also in a context of a massive shift to the far right after the defeat of the Scottish referendum of the independence vote, Brexit, Grenfell, Windrush, small boats, Rwanda policy. It just, the ongoing racist police killings, the whole scandals around the abduction and the systematic rape and sexual abuse in the police force and the Met Police. All of this is not being met by any pushback at the grassroots, and instead what's filling the political space is two problematic wings of the same colonial racist state and problem. It's on the one hand very patronising, disempowering liberals, and on the other hand the right-wing forces which are manipulating this whole situation. Finally, we have to report that a far-right toxic advocate close to the Moscow leadership, Maxim Fomin, otherwise who called himself Vladlen Tatarsky, has been killed in an operation around a public speaking event that he spoke in St Petersburg. Actually, it was a cafe owned by the leader of the racist death squad, Wagner Prigozhin, who was reportedly supposed to speak at the same event. Interesting, he didn't show up to that. So condolences and commiserations to the entire red-brown fascist collaborating racket that has lost one of its senior comrades in the form of Vladlen Tatarsky. We wish everyone in that camp to take care going forward. You never know what might happen. So that's Counter Narrative News, bringing you daily news today. Please do continue to support us by subscribing to encouraging your friends and contacts to subscribe to our YouTube channel and to follow us on Twitter at @counter_CNN. Please look out for lots of interesting videos on our YouTube channel. Please continue to comment, like and share. We wish you a fantastic day. Thank you.